In order to take advantage of all of the functionality of TourTools, when you are creating your packages, which are associated with your tours, you will want to include the components from the vendor library. So the next step will be to visit the vendor records, which is the starting point for the vendor library. Every vendor that you do business with will have a vendor record. It is essentially their contact record. It will have the vendor name, the address, and the name and contact information for your sales representative. This is considered the service address. This is where the hotel is located, where the restaurant is located, where the theater is located. You can also have a billing address information if billing is handled through corporate or any other address other than where the service is provided. For every vendor, you can load deadlines. And these deadlines would, for instance, for a hotel, this would be a description. Let me go ahead and see if I have some of these loaded in a record. Entering find mode. This will search basically just for any record that has some information in this field. This indicates a description, deposit due. The deposit is due 60 days prior. The amount of the deposit is $250. It is refundable, very important information. And in order to get that deposit refunded, we need to contact them 30 days prior. We have additional fields which may be appropriate for other vendors. This would be the date upon which or prior to which final count was due, and in the case of a hotel, the date prior to which the final rooming list is due. When you include a component from this vendor in a package, the part of the publishing process will be to create operations records, which will then automatically create to-do items for any of the components that you have entered here: deposits, final payment, room count. Also in the vendor record, you can create standard text information, such as standardized notes for your proposal, your itinerary, which is a more complex document that comes out of operations, confirmation. This is more for FIT type packages where you're providing a little bit more information to the individuals. You're also able to put in specific default notes for escorts and drivers. And then we have a field for follow-up comments so that when you get notes back from the road, you can go ahead and record these notes here. It's kind of a running commentary on things that either went wrong or went right with this vendor for future reference. We have an activity and to-do screen for each vendor. The activities, no specific activities have been scheduled for or have been recorded for this vendor. These would include emails that have been sent requesting contracts or rates for a new year. These are to-do items for this vendor. At this level, at the vendor level, you don't have specific tour components because tour service components, because that happens at a little bit lower level. That typically happens at the operations level. But here, this would summarize all of the components that have been loaded and attached to an operations record, so you could quickly review all of the to-do items for this particular vendor, independent, shall we say, of a particular tour. This would record any documents that had been created for this vendor. TourTools does have a digital document library, so that a number of documents that are created in the system are loaded to the document library, so that you don't have to print them and put them in folders. You're able to store copies of your rooming lists or your invoices that are created in TourTools. You're also able to scan documents such as contracts or rooming lists that are provided by group leaders. You're able to scan those in and attach them to the appropriate records so that, again, you're not reliant on paper folders. You could pull it up from your office. You could pull it up from your laptop on the road. It makes it much more accessible and appropriate for sharing information. Now getting into what I've referred to as the vendor library. I'm going to go ahead and change records here. Again, I typed hot wash. Pieces of words in one field. You do not have to put in a lot of information into TourTools in order to pull up one or more records. This is what we call the product date record. This record is like a filing cabinet, if you will. Each row, each line represents a drawer. This drawer contains information about rooms and meals for the year 2013, and there are 5 records in this category or room or drawer, if you will. Again, we've got duplication features. I can duplicate these components to to a new year if I desire, or I can duplicate it even to another vendor if I want. In order to look at the detail, I click on the detail button, and I have another list. This is a list of all of these components. If I click on detail for buffet breakfast, I see that this is a per person cost. The net inclusive price, inclusive of tax and gratuity, is $14.75. I can also load a child rate. Now, child pricing in TourTools has a very specific meaning, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to a more detailed level. You can also record the number of comps that this vendor is going to provide to you. The number of comps would be 1 in this instance. The level is the number required to purchase in order to achieve 1 comp. Now, you can leave the level blank if you're going to get 1 comp regardless of what you sell, but in this case, you'll get 1 for 15 complimentary. You can also assign inventory to this component. This would tell it inventory of 25, 35, 500, whatever would be appropriate for this service. You switch inventory on and off by clicking these radio buttons. Clicking on the detail button here, this is a room component. We have net single, double, triple, quad. This is tax in a percentage, luggage round trip, occupancy tax. Occupancy, again, that can be, this is a dollar amount, not a percentage. Comps, if there's a fee for an extra bed, you can load that. And if there's a driver's rate, you can load the driver's rate. Now, room costs can take different forms. If it's a hotel, a typical quote would be per room, per night, which is what you see here. Now, if it's a cruise, a more appropriate pricing would be per person, per stay. In other words, it would be per person for the duration of the cruise. Sometimes hotels, if you're buying a package, will be quoted per room, per stay. Other times it will be quoted per person, per stay. So in other words, we've set it up so that you can quickly enter your figures, make the selection on the appropriate pricing formula, so you don't have to do a lot of math outside of TourTools in order to load the prices. We also have the ability to create what we call set rates. The rates we were just talking about were the net rates. When you load them into a package, they are net and will be marked up by whatever profit margin you elected. The set rates, on the other hand, are loaded to the package but are not marked up. An example of a set rate would be, let's say you get tickets for a Beatles reunion concert, and you pay $100 for them. So you would load a per person cost of $100. But you know, because these tickets will be fairly heavy demand, you can sell them for $200 a piece. So you would create a set rate entry of $200, and when you load that component to the package, you would load the set rate value of $200, not the $100 net. When you go to price the package, it would price all of the net components and mark them up, but it would not mark up the set price components. In other words, it wouldn't put a double markup on them. It does provide two levels of set rates, a retail and a wholesale. Again, it's not always appropriate, but some business models do require that, and it's good to know that it's there. Over on the right-hand side, you see, and it may be chopped off a little bit on your screen, these are the note fields that are brought forward from the standard notes in the vendor record. You can go ahead and modify the notes here, appropriate for a breakfast as opposed to a room. Then these descriptions will then flow to the package and into operations for the proposal and the itinerary. Blocks of tickets in TourTools. So if you buy 50 seats from a theater, row 15 seats A through Z, whatever. Once you get your tickets, you're able to actually load your ticket blocks into TourTools so that when you make a booking, you're able to assign specific tickets to specific individuals. So we do have that level of detail.